welcome to Project CB News. With me, I've got Chuck Holton, and he's from the Danger Zone. So a very warm welcome to you, Chuck.
Glad to be here.
So let us talk about this conflict of in Gaza. From the word go up to now, there's a lot of things that the main media says it's happening, and we know the truth. So we just want to get to the truth.
Yes, for sure. I arrived in Israel about 2 days after the attack happened, and I was one of the first journalists that was allowed to visit the kibbutz called Be'eri, which is one of those that was attacked. About 10% of the people in that kibbutz were murdered by Hamas. Hamas took over the kibbutz and was planning to murder many more and hold them hostage. And they were cleared out. There were still bodies on the ground when I got there, and parts of bodies, both from the terrorists and from the civilians that were living there. One of the ironic things about that is that that's one of those kibbutzim that was very close to Gaza that actually was very sympathetic to Gaza. They really felt that they could live in peace with the Palestinians. Many of them hired Palestinians to work in their homes, to work in their shops, in their farms. And actually, many of those families ended up being murdered because those very employees who were working in their homes gave them away to the Hamas terrorists. And Hamas came through with actually lists of who lived where and who might be home, might not be home. And they used those lists to hunt down and murder the civilians in Be'eri. So when I hear people saying that, and I've heard a lot of Palestinians say that really didn't happen, they really didn't murder all those people. I was there. They did. I saw it. I saw the bodies. I talked to one of the rescuers who was one of the first people into Be'eri after they finished killing all the terrorists in there. And he showed me a photograph of a baby that had been roasted alive in an oven in someone's apartment. And the mother had been raped and murdered right in front of, in the kitchen in front of the stove. So that kind of brutality is just absolutely unthinkable for people from a civilized country. They, as you know, took more than 200 people hostage into Gaza. There's still more than 130 of those that have yet to be found or released. And so, as far as most Israelis are concerned, every time the Palestinians in Gaza cry about people starving in Gaza or genocide in Gaza or their, homes being destroyed or whatever, the Israelis just simply say, release the hostages. Just release the hostages. You say you have no food, release the hostages. You say you have no medical care, release the hostages. You say you can't leave, release the hostages. You still have more than 100 people. And as an American, I can't imagine if some cartel from Mexico came across into San Diego and murdered 1,200 people and took a couple of hundred people hostage back into Mexico. If it's hard to imagine the United States military not pulling out all the stops, doing whatever it took to get those hostages back. And that's exactly what the IDF is doing. They are systematically dismantling Gaza on purpose, and they have every right to do so because there are still more than 100 hostages. If they would just release the hostages, then there would be a path to peace. But there will not be a path to peace, according to the Israelis that I've talked to, until the hostages are released.
Chuck, for me, that is quite a interesting topic because we don't know about the hostages. It's all about the Palestinians and the humanitarian aspect of it, but there's a reason for all of this, and we don't know. And for you to say, yes, there's hostages, it makes sense why Israel will not just give up, because it's their people.
That's right. And if they stop, not only do they not get their hostages back, but they lose the war. I mean, the war is the stated goal of the Israelis is to dismantle Hamas and make it so that they could never again commit such a heinous act of terror against Israel. And anything short of total victory is a loss.
Yes.
There's no middle ground here. There's no, almost winning. There's no, making a deal with the people from Hamas, because that would be like making a deal with the devil. They want a ceasefire. They had a ceasefire on October 6th, and Hamas violated the ceasefire. And so the Israelis have a very tough nut to crack here, because they can either completely wipe out Hamas or get their hostages back. Doing both of those things is going to be very, very difficult, because if they completely wipe out Hamas, they will likely be forced to wipe out their own hostages in the process. If they don't wipe out Hamas, then they lose the war and they open themselves up for another attack like October 7th. So they are being pretty pragmatic about it. They understand that there's a very high likelihood that they will not get their hostages back alive, and that they are steeling themselves for that eventuality, and saying, whether or not we get our hostages back alive, we have to accomplish the goal of destroying Hamas. That is a non-negotiable at this point. So yeah, you're right. A lot of people across the globe are focusing only on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The reason that there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza is because Hamas will not release the hostages. Until they do, every person that starves to death in Gaza is on the hands of Hamas, not on the IDF.
And this is, for me, it's problematic because we don't get the truth. It's all about the Palestinians and the humanitarian aspect of it, but no one understands that it's actually Hamas that is causing all of this. The Israelis are just on defense all the time, just to get their people
has
back.
To point out, though, that the Palestinian people, by and large, still support Hamas, and almost many of the hostages that have been released so far have told us that they were held not by Hamas fighters, but by Palestinian civilians. So Hamas took them hostage and then gave them to Palestinian civilians. The Palestinian civilians held them until such a time as they were told to give them up. Even we're finding that about half of the people who came into Israel, crossed the fence on October 7th, were not actually Hamas fighters per se. They were just civilians who followed the Hamas fighters in. And those people took hostages as well. So it's hard to feel sorry for the Palestinians, because they have brought this on themselves, and they are bringing it on themselves day after day after day, because they are unwilling to release those hostages.
And it's unfortunate that everyone is focusing on them and not the truth. It is like they neglect the truth and wants to say, but poor Palestinians, poor this, poor that, and what about the humanitarian aspect of it? But I know for sure that Israel did so many things to keep them out of harm. Like when they wanted to infiltrate, they just gave out pamphlets and saying, this is what's going to happen. Please get out of the area. And they did it.
Right. That's right. And many of there are still hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who have refused to leave, even when they've been told to leave. And Israel's doing the best they can to clear out those areas before their rules of engagement say that if a building is militarized in any way, so if it's got weapons in it, if they're being shot at from that building, if it has rockets or rocket launchers in it, or entrances to tunnels, because the tunnels are all military infrastructure. If it has any of those things, it's considered a military target, and they are justified in flattening the building. But they normally will make sure that the building is empty first before they flatten the building, unless, of course, they're being attacked from that building. And so this is the thing I've pointed out over and over again. The numbers that are being released about the number of deaths in Gaza, they cannot be believed, first of all, because they are statistically impossible. They show that there is a exact ratio of 70-30 women and children being killed to males every single day. Every single day, when they put out the numbers of people killed, there is exactly 70% of the people are women and children, and exactly 30% are men. 0% are considered combatants. They are all considered civilians. Well, we know for a fact that that's just not true. And it's statistically impossible that they would be exactly 70% women and children every single day, and that the number of people killed, it's not like you have some days where more people are killed and some people, less people are killed. The numbers that they put out every day are essentially exactly the same number of people killed every day. So it goes up and it perfectly line, and that just is, like I say, statistically impossible. And there are days where they show that some of the males who were reported dead come back to life. So you cannot trust the numbers coming out of the Gaza Health Ministry, but the world media and governments, including my own, are quoting those numbers as if they are gospel. What we do know is that the IDF has killed more than 9,000 Palestinian fighters. These are people who were in the act of fighting against the IDF when they were killed. More than 9,000 people. This represents about half of, probably, of the total number of fighters that Hamas claimed to have at the beginning. The problem with those numbers is that, when you're a Palestinian living in Gaza, if you're a military-age male, Hamas comes to you and says, "You're one of ours, right?" What are you going to say? You don't really have a choice. So all of the fighters that have been killed fighting the IDF are wearing civilian clothes. That doesn't make them civilians. If they've got a gun in their hand and they're shooting at you, they're not a civilian. Just the simple fact of a military-aged male walking around without a gun in his hand does not make him a civilian either. And this is the real difficulty that Israel has, is not winning in the kinetic battle space on the ground. It's winning in the information battle space in cyberspace, on social media, in government speeches that are being given, like from your own government, who is claiming that they're committing genocide. Well, if Israel is committing genocide, they're very, very bad at it, because there are now more Palestinians than there have been at any time in history. So if the number of Palestinians keeps going up, then you're not very good at killing them if you're trying to kill them all off. If you go back even just 10 years, there are now something like 500,000 more Palestinians in Gaza than there were just 10 years ago. And so that doesn't look like a genocide. It's hard to say that, but what they're doing is they're redefining the word to fit the circumstances on the ground, meaning Israel is bombing Gaza, therefore Israel is committing a genocide. That's not what a genocide is. And we have to be very diligent about forcing the issue when it comes to using proper language. If it's a genocide, that is an intentional, purposeful attack with the objective of wiping out an entire race of people, an entire nation of people. And that is obviously not happening, because there are Palestinians in the West Bank, for example, who are not being bombed every day. There are Palestinians in Jordan. There are Palestinians all over the world. And obviously those people are not being targeted. So the simple fact that they're bombing Gaza, because Gaza is the place from which the attack on October 7th was launched, does not a genocide make.
Yeah. That is one of the things that we need to speak about is that language and terminology that's been used to fit the agenda of a government or people per se, because they're so likely to just want to say something and put it out there as the truth. And if you really think about it, like you've mentioned, the numbers, it doesn't match up or doesn't add up. Using words like genocide, which is not, and it's so easy to get into that way of, oh no, it's not, it's bad because the terminology and the numbers look bad. But if you think a little bit about it, it's really the other side around or other way around.
That's right. Yeah, and your own government in South Africa is, in my understanding, receiving money from the Iranians to try to put forth this narrative that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza and take them before the International Criminal Court and accuse them of genocide. That is all designed by Israel. I'm sorry, designed by Iran to try to get at Israel in the information battle space. This is what we're seeing. And Israel, for its part, is losing in the information battle space because they are hampering our journalists like me, our ability to go in and tell the truth of what's happening on the ground. I've made many requests to get into Gaza, to go in with the Israeli troops to show what they're doing. And I'm not being allowed to do it. The Israelis are saying, we're putting out video every day that you can use in your reports. But if the video is coming from the IDF, then they are one of the belligerents in this contest. They need a party. That's what journalists are for. This is why why we exist. So you can have somebody that's a non-committed third party who can go in and can report what's happening on the ground. And I have no doubt that what the IDF is putting out is true. They've been very transparent in terms of their own casualties, in terms of their foul ups, things that they've done wrong, and what they've done to correct those things. They've been very, very transparent with those things. So you have to give them kudos for that. But at the same time, they are not allowing third parties into Gaza to show what's happening. And so all you get are either Hamas supported journalists. In many cases, the journalists and Hamas are one and the same.
Yes.
The journalists are Hamas. Or you get the IDF putting out that, what the video that they're putting out, which even if it's true, because it comes from them, it is automatically suspect in the world court, in the world body. And so they need to do a better job of allowing journalists like me to do our jobs, to go in there and report on what's going on. And if you believe truly that your cause is just, then you should have no problem allowing journalists to come in and tell the story.
I fully agree, Chuck, because journalism, it's basically journalism 101. Is just go in there, get your information, don't be biased. But this sounds more like a one-sided story, and it sounds like propaganda because they are just giving one side of the information to the world out there. There's no depth in really giving both sides of the story.
I have not seen one example of left-wing journalists that are reporting on Hamas saying anything negative about Hamas, saying where one of their rockets fell short and killed Palestinian civilians, where they've stolen aid that was meant for the civilians in Gaza. I have not seen them report on that at all.
Sure.
And that obviously shows a real lack of integrity when it comes to their journalistic standards. On the other hand, as a journalist reporting on Israel, half of the journalists that are in there reporting on Israel are anti-Israel, and they make
Sure.
it very clear. And Israel still allows them to come into the briefings, allows them to ask their questions. They do their best to answer their questions, and they will actually show when one of their soldiers, for example, commits a war crime, does something that's against the rules. They will show and point out, yes, that was wrong. Here's what we're doing about it. That guy is being disciplined for it, whatever. Or where they make a mistake, where they accidentally shoot some of their own hostages or something like that. They don't try to hide it. They put it out. That gives them more credence when it comes to believing what they say, but at the same time, they need to do a better job of allowing journalists to do our jobs. And they keep saying, well, it's for your own safety. Look, it's not up to you. That's not up to you. If you're one of the two belligerents, it's not on you if I go in there and get myself killed. The Ukrainians understood that very well. In the Ukraine war, they would allow us to go. If I have a press pass, I can go wherever I need to go to get the story. And there were even instances of journalists crossing the front lines and going across to the Russian side and getting killed because the Russians would certainly kill them for it. But the Ukrainians wouldn't stop them. They'd say, "Hey, this is the end of our lines. You shouldn't go any further." If Israel did that, they would be doing a lot better in the information battle space. And so that's one criticism I have of Israel, in case people are out there saying, "Oh, you're on Israel's side." No, I'm on the side of truth, and I would like to see the truth come out. And from what I have seen with my own eyes on the ground, October 7th did happen. It was an absolutely heinous act of terror against civilians. When you hear people make this argument that, well, the Israelis have hostages too, they haven't released the 9,000 people they have. You cannot make an equivalence between the prisoners that Israel put in prison because they were stabbing, shooting, blowing up, or running over Jews. Right? These are convicted murderers and criminals who are being put in jail, whether or not they are quote unquote children. When they call them children, that just means that they're under 21. Most of them are 17, 18, 19 years old, which doesn't make them children in my eyes.
No.
Right. But you can't make an equivalence between those prisoners and the hostages who were innocent civilians that were in their own homes, that were cowering, doing nothing belligerent toward the Palestinians at all, and were grabbed out of their homes and taken against their will into Gaza. There is no moral equivalence there whatsoever. And anybody who tries to draw an equivalence morally between those two things is disingenuous at best and evil at worst.
No, that's true. That's and that's the facts that we are searching, and the truth that we are searching, because they don't report on this. They just say there's hostages in Israel, but why? But the comparison now is, it's not. It's criminals that sits in and they need to be there. It's not because it's a hostage and a criminal, two different things. So and that's where the information, we as South Africa is just getting the information, and the question is then, from where do we get it? And it should be then from Hamas that we get our information, direct information of what's happening in the Gaza Strip.
Well, apparently so, especially those in your government. Now, I think you could make a case that the government leaders in South Africa who are jumping up and down about free Palestine and all that sort of thing are simply doing that out of their own self-interest because they're being paid to do so.
Yes.
But if they really believe that, then obviously they're depraved. They believe that good is bad and bad is good.
Yep.
There is no equivalence morally whatsoever between Israel defending its sovereign territory and its citizens to the Palestinians coming out of their area, coming out of Gaza, illegally crossing into Israel and murdering innocent civilians. Look, there is so much video out there that you cannot deny what happened. There's so much proof. It's not like somebody's made a claim. It's not a he said, she said thing. Go watch some of those videos. When I see videos of Hamas terrorists literally holding a woman by her hair and shooting her in the head, or going up to a car with little children in it and machine gunning the little children in their car seats. There's video of this.
No.
This is not something somebody made up. And if you find yourself on the side of trying to justify that somehow, I think you need to check yourself. You need to check your own moral compass, because it's broken.
Oh, it seems like what is good becomes bad, and what's bad is then actually good, which is wrong. The sense is what's good is good, and bad is bad, and that's why
It's called depravity.
Yeah.
The word depravity is exactly that. It's calling evil good and good evil.
Yeah. So let's quickly run through the process of what's currently happening in Israel and in Hamas, the two opposites on the ground level.
What we see happening in Gaza now is Israel is still continuing to clear out the northern part of Gaza and Khan Yunis in the center part of Gaza, and they're preparing to push into Rafah in the south. Now, world governments like my own have told them that's a red line. We won't support you going into Rafah. And Israel is saying, if we don't go into Rafah, we lose the war. We have to go into Rafah, because that's where most likely the rest of our hostages are and the rest of the Hamas fighters are. We have to go in there and finish the job.
Yes.
In the process, obviously, there are over 1 million people that are crowded into Rafah. They've got to be able to give those Palestinians places to go where they can be safe. And that's complicated by the fact that Hamas wants very badly for as many of those people to die as possible, because that's how they win the information war. And so they're doing everything they can to either stop them from leaving or to leave with them and then shoot at the IDF from within the safe zones that are established and cause the IDF to shoot at civilians in order to defend themselves. The United States is spearheading this idea that they're going to build a dock, build a big pier into Gaza onto the beach, but through which they can pass more humanitarian aid. That is really window dressing. It's a political theater designed to help Joe Biden in the polls in the upcoming elections in November. But it really won't make that much of a difference, other than giving Hamas one more target to shoot at. Hamas is already putting out the word around Gaza that the United States is building a pier in order to build a military base in Gaza and staff it with U.S. military. So obviously they are planning to attack this. It will be. It's already a failure, even without having started. They want the Palestinian people to starve. There's no question about it. The Hamas fighters, their only weapon now that is effective against Israel is the weapon of public opinion. And the only way that they can maintain a negative public opinion of Israel is to have as much misery and suffering go on in Gaza as possible. So Israel is doing everything they can to wipe out Hamas while they ameliorate the suffering of the Palestinian people. Meanwhile, the Hamas fighters are doing everything they can to exacerbate the suffering in Gaza. And that's what we're seeing. In the north, the Israelis have more than 160,000 troops, and they are preparing to possibly go into southern Lebanon. There were more than 100 rockets fired into Israel yesterday out of Lebanon. The Israelis are striking very hard, very deep into Lebanon, all the way, hundreds of miles deep into Lebanon, striking Hezbollah targets. We're starting to see billboards come up inside Lebanon saying, we don't want war. The people of Lebanon are not happy with Hezbollah. They don't want Hezbollah to continue this and to cause Israel to come in on the ground, boots on the ground inside Lebanon. And so Hezbollah is being squeezed because they're as much a political organization as a military one now, and that's a real problem.
The heart of this war is I almost want to say it is a physical thing, but it's more of a information a fight as well, because the misinformation that is given to everyone out there just makes Israel's case not so strong as the Palestinian case and the humanitarian aspect of what's happening. But let the truth be told is Hamas is behind everything here.
There's no question they are. Hamas, when you look at the videos that are coming out of Gaza, many of them are highly produced. There have been dozens of instances of videos purporting to show wounded Palestinians, dead Palestinians, dead children. And as it turns out, the dead children are actually dolls. They're actually, plastic dolls. Or the dead Palestinians suddenly sit up and check their Facebook account on their phone, or they're, the wounded people, take the bandage off and there's no wound there. It's even spawned its own name. They call it Pollywood after Palestine.
Yes.
And so those things just reduce the possibility or reduce the probability that the information that you're getting out of Gaza is reliable.
No.
It's obviously not. And they're making up false reports of dead and wounded and babies starving and all this sort of thing. But there are undoubtedly babies that are dying, and there are undoubtedly people who are being injured, and reports that not all of them are false. But again, all you have to say in regards to that is release the hostages. It's all on Hamas. This can all stop right now if they release the hostages. Point, period, end of story. We don't need to talk about it anymore. Release the hostages. So we are not getting the straight story. You are not getting a straight story in South Africa if you're listening to the mainstream media. Look, we can have compassion on the people inside Gaza, and we can still say nothing happens until you release the hostages. We will continue on this track until you release the hostages, because it is understandable and perfectly justified for Israelis to take whatever steps are necessary, including causing suffering to Palestinian civilians, in order to retrieve their hostages from Gaza. Once the hostages are released, then it's a different ballgame. But until they release the hostages, they should not stop. They have a moral duty to continue. And I think that's one thing a lot of people just don't understand. Unfortunately, Israel is losing the support of many nations across the globe, including the United States, as they continue. And because it's an election year, the Biden administration cannot politically afford to be seen to be too chummy with Israel or too friendly toward Israel, because so many of the left-wing base that they cater to are very pro-Hamas.
Chuck, we need to do a follow-up very soon. I know that you are very busy, but thank you so much for your time. And thank you for giving us the truth. I mean, there's a lot more to talk about. And I think we've just put the foundation, or not, we just started to put the foundation of the truth out here. And if you would not mind, we can always do a follow-up, do a series on getting the truth out there. Because Chuck, you said, just release the hostages and it's a different ballgame. Different story at all. So from our side, from Project CB News, thank you so much for all this info. And hopefully, as we get this info out there, the Bible yet again says the truth will set you free. And that is exactly what we want to do, is we want to give the truth out there and let the people see what's happening, the real thing happening, and not the half truths that's coming out of Hamas and at the Gaza's point at all. So thank you so much.
Sure, you make a very good point there. That Bible verse it says the truth will set you free. It's truth with a capital T. It's truth as a person, and that person is Jesus.
Yes.
And really, what it comes down to is that until we change the hearts of the people in Gaza, nothing will actually get better. You can try to impose peace through the sword, but you're still going to have hatred. And the only thing that will wipe out the hatred is to bring the God of love to the people of Gaza. That is the God that sent his own son to die for us on the cross, named Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Chuck. We'll definitely speak again, and please keep us up to date with what's happening on your side and what's happening in Israel and at Gaza, and just let us get the truth out there.